Okay, let's do this. So this is Thomas and I'm really motivated after visiting Vision as a satellite party because I talked to a lot of other demo sceners and we discussed features and tools and I showed them a little bit how I do stuff with Tooll and they got super excited and that excites me as well. So I thought I would use this energy and do some more videos. And the first video I want to do is to go through the change history in the backlog and go a little bit through all the new features that we added since the last release. And so maybe stop this here because we don't need this right now. And we switch into this one here. So see, I'm using fork and I'm using Git. You don't have to use Git, but for me it's super helpful. And so there was a discussion earlier on Discord. Where is the gear icon to change the audio soundtrack? And then I realized that, well, boy, I haven't merged dev into master for a very long time. So dev is the branch I'm normally dev for development, and this is the branch I'm working on. And I think it's super close to the edge. So sometimes I'm pushing stuff here and maybe things break. So I'm a little bit hesitant to merge the dev development into the master. So you see, like, the master is the yellow branch here, and you see I didn't do this for a very long time. So last time was there. And actually, if you go down further, so there was one here. This is like almost half a year ago, the last time I tagged a version with a version which was 1.0 or 0.1, sorry. And so, okay, this is way too many changes, but I think I should go through like these things here. So the last time I merged dev into master was in March. So, going through these will maybe help you to see what's going on and also help you to read this history and to see why I write these kinds of things. So let's run through them. So frequently when you use a square bracket, this means, okay, I have been working on an operator. So pair points for lines has new option to set W as 1 and to 1 and 0, or 0 and 1. So let's do this. So it's still running here. So, and it's actually also, like, for me, a good opportunity to explain a bunch of operators you might not know about. So let's say you have a grid of points here. And we draw these points, maybe do a group. So we have something here, and maybe we stick for one-dimensional field for now. And maybe also we don't need that many. So and maybe we have another maybe like a radial G points. Let's draw them as well. Draw points, feed them into our output here. So, and there's one option which is nice, which basically groups these into lines. So you can pair points for lines, and it wants two sets of points, and then we can draw these as lines, and then let's draw them here in the middle without replacing. So, and it will draw like all combinations between these. This can be like a nice effect, and so you can do all kinds of things, obviously. So if you start, let's say you rotate these, you see, maybe you can do this with a tool here, so we can rotate them. We don't have to do this manually. So it will always create some nice interesting patterns, and a new parameter here is that we can change, interpolate the value for this W thing. So, and if you go in here and say, let's say, like, we increase this, so it will have some effect that might be useful for instance, texturing, things like that. So next feature. Let's go back here. So first draft of annotation nodes. So I brought a feature here. Feature feed means it's a short form for feature in our terminology here. And so all these things here are related to some typo here, but ignore this. It's all implementing one feature, and we did this in a couple of steps. So first yes, there is a new model here, so we can save it, then types can be added, text can be added, and there's a shortcut, and then we of course want undo and redo. And if you are super curious, you can go into the changes and see, okay, what does all this code do? So for annotation, it was pretty big feature, not as big as you might think, but it was like a feature that I want to have in the feature branch. And then what annotations do is, so you select a bunch of nodes, you press A, and then you can start writing some comments here. Do something with lines. If you click outside, if you drag this, you can move this whole thing around. If you select it first, you can only draw the annotation here, and then you can resize it here. So it's a nice handy feature to add some more documentation. So next in line, add different interpolation modes for gradients. So this one is nice. It's not completely finished, but it's getting there. So sometimes, let's say you want to have like a linear ramp, and the linear ramp, if we look at these parameters here, they have a gradient, and we can use our powerful simple gradient operator here to fill this gradient. And sometimes I learned that this is bad. This is really bad. Oh no, I have to fix this. This is bad. So good that I'm showing this. So the problem is that this one is not updating because it's caching too hard. So sometimes like we need to cache things, otherwise things will be very slow. Caching means like we are not evaluating this operator like we should. And so one thing to cache is to always feed in time. Time is always animated. Other ways to cache might be to say that this operator is animated. Let's see if this works. Yeah, this also works. So I have to fix this. So this is bad. Anyways, what the feature I wanted to show you is that sometimes you have gradients that look okayish, but not good enough. And the thing we added now is a new parameter here that we can change to different interpolation modes. And these can be super useful for sampling shaders where you want to distribute colors by random, or if you want to have smoother transitions, you can change to smooth. And one thing I really like is OK Lab, which is a color space that does very well with maintaining saturation changes. So let's say if you add a node here and we move this here and we click it here, we only change hue situation. The situation stays there, and we only change hue. Then it tries to maintain visibly the same brightness. If we change this back to linear, then we see how like there's a perceived fall in intensity. So this is kind of nice. Let's go back to the next feature. In parameter window, allow value manipulation with mouse wheel. So this is a super nice feature. So if you have a parameter anywhere, so it could also be an animated parameter somewhere, you see that we now have like this hover indication here. And if we have this, then we can use the mouse wheel. If you press Shift and use the mouse wheel, the changes will be more gradual. With control, they will be more drastically. So like sometimes you want to have fast changes, sometimes granular changes. So this might be super nice. So sometimes just like using this arc thing might be irritating. And if I remember it correctly, there should be a feature to disable that. Drag snap use, maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, then I thought it would be stable enough to have the mouse manipulation always on. So if this annoys you and you see like this is you do too many manipulation by accident, drop me a note, I will change that. So we added a new radial color picker. So you might have noticed if I'm clicking here, it now shows like this kind of color picker, which I personally find way more easy to work with, especially for things like color grading, because in the other you would have to similarly like change the hue and then change like the brightness and intensity. And here you only have like this area and this area. So only 2 sliders to change 3 options, which is like, for me at least like more convenient. And I noticed that I'm using this super frequently. It's okay to work with. I think it could be, it could use some tweaking. If you have more ideas, drop me a note. One thing here, so this is the alpha lower, I think. If you want to go to pure white, my trick is to go down and up. And if you want to go whiter than white, so why would you do this? Sometimes you want, for instance, for like if you want to add, let's say you want to add like a glow here. Then having like an intensity of 8 will make it glow more. And if you ever wondered how you see what the intensity is, there's a super nice operator called image levels, which it gives you a gradient curve. You can actually change the position of this. So you see like it slices through the image. Maybe kind of strange to let it glow, but it slices through the image and gives you like the curves for red, green, and blue. And you see that the current interpolation is linear. If you change this to smooth, you see actually how this changes. If you change this to OK lab, we see that the interpolation is still linear, but so maybe one day we want to have like a smooth OK lab interpolation. Should be straightforward. And yeah, if I change this back to linear, and if I now increase the brightness, you see here, this is the brightness I'm adjusting. And now if I'm holding control and then pushing this up, you see that we can push this into white clamping land, which normally looks not so nice. So if you do something like this, so you use blurred, or you can, for instance, use tone mapping, which sometimes, obviously, we should your image level after the tone mapping. There we go. And so this will prevent time clipping. So there are a bunch of different tone mapping curves here. So some are more drastic than others. All try to prevent clipping because it just leads to pure, well, it's just like this corner there looks just ugly. So, okay, let's go back to the feature list. So we had our radial color picker, we improved beat detection and add apply random walk with an example. So this is an operator I'm still working on. I think it has some potential. I'm thinking about building a demo with that. So random walk example. So always check for the examples. And so, okay, like this is some crazy thing going on here. So maybe we can look in here, what's happening. So the idea is that we have like a radial point. We keep these points to have some form of simulation. So maybe it's easier to see what happens if this is a grid. And let me enable the timeline. And if we scroll back, it should now initialize some kind of grid. And so the main thing is this operator here, which has a certain step width and a turn angle and a ratio. So the higher the ratio, the more likely is that in each individual step, the thing does a step or a rotation. So, and this is the turning angle. So if we change this to 90 degrees, we suddenly have like a raster image. Yeah, then we are once again using these steps, feeding them into key points, adding a point trail, and adding this directional modification to push them into the background, which yeah, I was really surprised how interesting this kind of thing looks. I'm still working on this, getting there, having some idea how to improve it. So I will keep you updated. So added a transform points example. So okay, let's see where this example is and what it's called. If you go for the changes, the green ones are new operators. And check that out. This example, we leave this one here. Soft transform points example 2. Let's see what this does. I didn't update this for a while, so I don't want to show this now. So we bumped ImGUI to version 187.3. So ImGUI is the UI library we are using. I got into the habit to bump the version frequently, or as frequently as the new version of the wrapper is being released. So we are not using ImGUI directly, but ImGUI.net, which is also another awesome open source project. And yeah, sometimes these new version introduce glitches. So there's still the set glitch that we have. You see like these thicker lines here. So this is a glitch that was introduced by one of these updates, and I am still I need to reserve some time to fix this, but most of the time the changes are useful, and whenever I'm doing this, I'm trying to test for quite a while before daring to actually push this. Fix normals on non-selected vertices with displaced mesh. So displaced mesh is okay, let's create a torus. Let's draw this torus. So here's our torus. Maybe we have a random camera. So let's the torus in the background. And so if we displace this mesh, so if we can increase the amount here and maybe also the frequency a little bit, and maybe the resolution, so it looks a little bit nicer. And maybe we also animate the face here with the time. So what this change means is that we added a new thing called vertex selection. It's a while ago and probably some earlier commit. And this means if we do a select vertex, that we have this new thing here. I think it should also come with a widget. So if I'm if I can handle, so you see I can actually grab things I'm selecting, and this filter wasn't applied correctly. So like the normals there were still manipulated, and this looked it was a bug basically. But this select vertices is super nice. So maybe I can show you a bunch of features. So right now we are in the mode we select vertices, we select a circle. You can also select a box, which looks like if you can at least see the box there a little bit. You can, if you change the fall off, you see the box. I guess it should be easier to see now. We have, so you can manipulate where this box is. So right now I'm always like moving around the center here, but you could also stretch it, rotate it and things like that. You can actually, there's a mode, so you can combine several of these select vertices, so and add them or replace them, and multiply and invert them. So maybe build like complex selection sets from that. And so yeah, there are a bunch of other things. Plane is useful to have like a vertical. So like there's like this plane going vertical, like in a horizon, parallel to the horizon. There's a zebra thing, which is like on, off, on, off, on, off. This is also sometimes useful for animating stuff. And I really like this noise thing here, which with a nice fall off can, okay, maybe like we do something like transform mesh. And if we move this here, so right now nothing is happening, but if I move this here, oh. Yeah, so some or most of these mesh operators should have an option use vertex selection. If you turn this on, then this will be applied. You see like how the noise is being effective here. And yeah, so you can do some super interesting stuff with that. And if you then animate the noise phase, you can do very interesting things. So in color picker, clamp upper value at 1. So we had this earlier. So if I'm pressing Control, I can have HDR values, fix double triggering of keyboard actions. So I think this was one leftover of the ImGUI update. Fix flickering cursor shapes above input fields, causing severe frame drops on mouse movement. I think this was also related to the ImGUI thing. So there was, if I had an input field, we changed this. Let's say I click this here. So these are all input fields, and every time I was hovering here, there was a very severe frame drop, which was annoying for VJing. Fix rendering of explore variation thumbnails when using draw mesh. So if you don't know what explore variation thumbnails are, let me quickly show this. Let's clear this. Let's change to a layout where there should be variations. Do we have one? No, no, no. Okay, so let's take this one here. Window, explore variations. So let's take this here. And so let's take our random camera here, or maybe not. Maybe try with this. So it's always interesting to see what we are coming up with. You don't need to display mesh here to clean this up by pressing G. And now if I render this into a render target, so this is now an image. You see this is an image. We can pause this here. And now what I can do is I can select multiple of these operators. Let's select the render target, the transform mesh. So I am holding down shift right now, and maybe the torus mesh here. And then you can see that this suggests you different variables that can be interpolated. So it gives me here different variations for the torus brightness. And maybe you can also see what this fill thing does. Or maybe we can have this transform mesh scale. What does it do? And you can actually zoom in and out here and give like completely different nice variations. So and sometimes you might discover stuff that is just very strange, and you might not have seen this before. Yeah, and then of course you can click there, you see like, oh, these are blended. It took me a while to figure out how to do this. You can, for instance, like go here and also like say, I want to have different background colors or so. Yeah, you get the idea. You can also maybe if you use select vertices too, I think there should be let's take the scale here. Does it do something? So this is and maybe also like the fall off. Maybe I don't know if this does something. Okay, but you get the idea. And if you want to have fine, like this is jumping like really crazy between like these different things. So let's click this here to apply it. So if you go down here and say, I want to have fine grain changes of these orange things, you can increase or decrease this thing. So let's go further. Added select point into W attribute and implement selection weights and local coordinate space for transform points. So I was so excited about the select vertices feature that I also added a select points feature. And if you have seen the introduction on working with points, you might remember that we have, so let's again create a radial G points. So this creates a GPU buffer of 100 points. And we can use any of our draw functions here to draw these points. And so each of these points has a position. So we see the position right now. It also has visualized points. It also has an orientation, which can be used for instantiating. And it also has a W parameter. I'm still learning the pronunciation here. And so let's pin this output here and increase the W thing. So we see now we have like small points there and big points there. And so we only have these these 8 float values, and we do this for performance reasons because we want to have like millions of these want to have buffers with millions of points, and 8 floats is just a very good number for memory management on a graphics card, so this will be more efficient. So anyways, we can use this to do things like select points, and then we have, for instance, something like transform points, and yeah, W is weight. If I turn this on, if I now move these, well, it looks like nothing is happening. But if I decrease the size of this thing here, we should actually see wait a second, I don't know, I guess we should not visualize these points, but draw the points and ignore the size here. So again, we go back to select points, and then we see, okay, something is happening here. So okay, this looks rather peculiar, but if we increase the fall off, we see, so you can smooth this out. If we decrease the size of this further and smooth it out further, we can do some super interesting things, for instance, with rotation. So if I start rotating this, so you immediately get some very interesting complex shape. And yeah, so and then of course select points has all the nice things of the other operators, so you can, for instance, use like a noise thing and yeah, do stuff and combine it in various ways. So it's like super nice to do certain manipulations. It's very effective. Let's go back to the change list. Implement quick switching between color buttons. I think this was just an UI improvement. We don't have to go into details for that. Sometimes if I see, okay, I need like 2 clicks and it should be 1, then I'm trying to fix it. Add a sphere mesh. So sometimes it's very useful to have a sphere. Draw mesh. So, okay, maybe you don't need it to be here, but there. No. And yeah, so it is okay. Flat shaded doesn't work. I should hide this operator, but yeah, it does the thing you expect from a sphere, and maybe vertex mesh vertices to points might be something you might be interested in, and maybe offset points. And maybe pair points for lines. I draw lines. So to have maybe this. So and zip, 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 zip. And we want this to execute, and this we want to. So sometimes if you want to build interesting things, so like you can use this, or this is actually a very bad example because it's not using the point space here. Transform points, let's take the transform points. Much better, much better. So so what this thing should do, if I clean this up a little bit. So we have the sphere. The sphere is in the background. We convert each of these vertices into a point. Let's draw these points. Draw points. Maybe not with white, but with orange, so we can actually see them. So vertices. And then we take these points, and then we use the point space, and we use Z to offset them. You see how these are poking out, and I think this can be the basis for some super interesting effects. And then of course you can do all these kinds of like displace mesh. I think we had earlier, and if we actually animate this with a space time. And if you move this, you can suddenly do things like this. So maybe we can put the coronavirus by using the transform points, and we draw these points and make them, what's the coronavirus? I think it's red or something. And then we reduce the, it's getting there. Yay, yay, hello little coronavirus. Okay, next feature. So we split mesh into vertices. So remember, every time we have a square bracket, it's a new op, or it's an op. We split meshes into vertices. So what does this mean? Right now we have, this is a complete, it uses something like an index buffer, which means every vertex is only used once and has a normal and like all these things you expect from a vertex, and the faces around them you reuse the same vertex. And if you move this vertex, these faces will always stay together. Sometimes this is not what you want. So for instance, like there's here this variation thing. If you want to rip these apart, it's not possible because so they are like still together. As you see up there, these faces are not together because they are not sharing the same thing, because they are using different UV coordinates. You could have changed it different. I decided to have different UV coordinates on the pole, and here as well, these are not the same, they're not sharing the same UV coordinate, because one is on the left side and one is on the right side. It looks like, okay, they could wrap, but they can't, because then you have some weird theme. Yeah, I got fooled by that actually. So anyways, if you now introduce the split vertex mesh, see how these are going, becoming apart. And this might be very interesting. So there's a scatter operator that will come up later. We can talk about this now. So let's reduce this amount here. It's easier to disconnect it than disconnecting it. And maybe we don't need these. So let's turn this off. So what scatter does is, obviously it has an amount here. If we reduce this, let's build this from scratch. This is clean this up a little bit. I'm always pressing Control P, but I should press P. So it has we built this operator in Tooll3, and it proved out to be, it was very useful for a bunch of demos. So Coronoid was mostly built with that operator, and I think Casifa and like some demos I built around this operator. And so one thing is, you can randomly scatter these, you can push them outwards, which is sometimes interesting, or inwards, obviously. You can shrink them. So if you shrink these to 0, they will be hidden. They should be hidden. Why are they not hidden? I have to look into that. Then you can, of course, because the amount is not 1. So if we go in here, press 1, they should be hidden. So so we don't want to hide them. We can scatter them, which means they are pushed along their face normal. We can distort them, which is kind of interesting. And we can add some noise here, which is also something interesting. We can change the noise frequency. Of course, we can change the noise phase, like the usual thing. And the nice thing is we can also use vertex selection, which I will do in a second. Yeah, so maybe we again increase the size here, and maybe we have less distortion. So maybe not. And maybe we don't push them. Rotation. Okay, we leave this at 1. So maybe we go from one effect to the next. So let's scatter them a little bit and distort them. And then we can add our wonderful select vertices. I think we talked earlier, and you see there. It's an interesting effect, I think. And we change the role. So we can also take the center and oscillate, increase the amplitude. That's already something interesting. Okay, next change. Add scatter mesh faces effect. Oh, we talked about this one. Recompute scatter mesh face number. So we improve this, re-implement soft transform points to support different volume shapes. Soft transform points might be interesting. So yeah, let's quickly talk about this. So we have a radial G points. Let's draw these as a line, and let's add more points. So now if we do soft transform points, it's very similar to actually selecting and then using transform, but it has a couple of differences. So let's decrease the volume size and increase the fall off, and move the center here, the volume center, move this a little bit to the side. And what you can do with this is you can size. So maybe this was too far away. So you can have like like all these are called Euler angles. Also because it's the local rotation around X, Y, Z, and Euler angles are actually bad for a number of reasons. Most of them, mostly because you can't really blend Euler angles because they have some uncontrolled behavior. And that's the reason why we internally, most of the time, we store quaternions for interpolation. So anyways, normally with Euler angles, you have like 360 and then it starts again. So it shouldn't make a difference if you have like 360 or 0. Here it does because you can change them in multiple revolutions, I think you could say. And then if you actually move these, so look at this super interesting shapes from that. So I'm center. So there we go. Yeah, so I was very amazed how versatile this operator is. And so of course, if you add like also like scaling, you suddenly get like super crazy shapes for free basically. Okay, next one. For drop-down parameters and select fixed drop-down parameters and select mesh faces and select vertices. So sometimes if I'm talking about drop-down parameters, this is a drop-down parameter. So internally we store this as an integer. And to see maybe how this works, so it's actually a good question. So like how this blend mode, how does it know? Does it that 0 is normal and 1 is additive and multiply is 3 and so on. So let me quickly go into code just to scare you. And we looked at the draw lines parameter. And there we see we have the blend mode. And there we have something called a map type. And this map type picks a blend mode, which is another class. We could jump in there. And in this other class, here are the definitions for normal, additive, multiply, and invert. And this is super cool because if we would add new blend modes or more blend modes, they would immediately show up in the drop-down list on all the operators. So this is super powerful thing. Whenever you see something missing there, so now you would actually know how to fix it yourself and maybe push a how do you say it, a pull request to me so I can push this into the master. Until then, you can just drop me a note and I will fix it for you. So sometimes blend mode will show up as 0 and so on. And this is because this one is missing. So every day something new. Refactor I transformable to prepare, undo, redo, and interacting with animated parameters. Interacting with animated parameters. So like one thing that was bad. Okay, actually it wasn't bad. It was just it wasn't done yet. So it was a feature missing and it was important. So if we have let's take this transform point thing here. So maybe if you rotate this. So if you move this, this is a gizmo. So we call it a gizmo. Eventually, very high on the to-do list is actually to have also gizmos for rotation and scaling, which should be really simple. But yeah, there are so many things that would be nice. Anyways, this is one of them. And one day we'll do this. One note, like if you hover this in the middle, you drag all 3 axes parallel to this camera. So sometimes it's a little bit subtle, but it's a good thing to know. So obviously these are in parallel or like on the axis red and green. And so if I'm dragging this here, you see how this is being updated. And one thing that was horrible was that if I click this here, it was animated, and then I wasn't able to move this anymore, which is bad. And I needed this for production, so I implemented it, and it was much more difficult than I thought. But now this works. And the nice thing is that it also works with undo. Okay, not with any. It works almost with undo. Let's remove the animation, but at least now like this Gizmo transformation is undo and redoable, which it wasn't before. So everything all related to Gizmo handling. There was a crash. So of course we always want to fix crashes first. Every time we see a crash, if we have a crash, tell me, I will fix it first. Prevent accidental completion of clone symbol dialog when pressing return. So this thing was if you clone a symbol, duplicate as new type, and then if you type a description here and you press return, this duplicate button there would be triggered, which was bad interaction. Repetition points can be useful for well, I don't have to go into there. So it's a useful operator, and I think there are probably a bunch of examples that show you how to do things with repetition points. There was a problem with draw mesh at points, so it didn't show the environment texture correctly. We fixed the dragging of animated Gizmo, so was the thing we were talking earlier. There was a warning in the code, probably some unused variables. We have the fixed name repetition points, so there was a syllable missing there. Prepare save only modified operator. So we see here again, this is like a feature branch. Remember, like there was a feature branch earlier, which was the annotation thing. Sadly, I merged this the wrong way. It's actually nicer to have it merged like this, so you see all the changes that are used for that feature together. But anyway, this is a nice feature. So we Alex convinced me that it would be very nice to have backups, and so I spent a weekend writing that, and maybe I can quickly show you how this works. So if Tooll is running and you switch to a layout that has shows the console, you see sometimes saving one modified symbol took 9 milliseconds, so less than a frame. So this is triggering, I think, every 3 minutes or something, and then it's going to save your current state and create a backup. You can disable this behavior if you want to, but so far I haven't seen any problems with that. And you can imagine, so a backup is all the operators and all the type definitions. So it has a certain size. It's not huge, so it's 4 megabytes, but it has a certain size. And for Tooll, I did write something which I found very smart. I clapped on my own shoulders. I was like, oh, I'm so proud. But anyways, we save all these backups in this directory. And then this is the backup we saved the last time. So you see here, like right now it's 40 past 10. This is already a way too long videos, but a lot of features happened. So, and then you see the last one was 3 minutes ago. 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 The last one was, and then you suddenly see that it's no longer 3 minutes, but it's way longer breaks because the backups are thinned out more the older they get, and then so eventually it will be like days before there's a backup, which might be useful. Maybe you are working for a day and then you figure out, wait a second, I should have saved them. So this works like this. So and this is all the zip files, so you can go in there. Here are all the operators, and then you can restore whatever you lost. Super useful, super useful. And to be honest, I already needed it today. So then we merged the whole feature. Then we added the timeline setting buttons to improve alignment of icons. So the reason I'm doing this video and I'm actually merging page to master is that somebody asked I want to have this gear icon, where is it? And well, it's now in the master. So now you find it. Before this, you can also press the right button on the second. I don't know who came up with that idea, but it's not the most intuitive solution. Yeah, and then I went here and basically adjusted a little bit the alignment of the icons. And so yeah, so maybe you can also press like the back icon there, and it's no longer lit. I still have to make these ones black if there is no animation. Yeah, it's on the to-do list. So then I updated icons for the gear icon, disable some modifications during saving to avoid data inconsistencies. Oh my god, there should be Y. Annotation can be copy pasted and duplicated. So this was a problem. So if we have like this, so sometimes you want to select all these and duplicate them over there. No, it should work. Should have worked. Huh. Okay. Punkt. Something on the to-do list. I thought this is like this fix. Doesn't work anymore. Good to have these reviews. Symbol browser shows description and example. Symbol browser ranks. Yeah, so the symbol browser, this is the symbol browser. And now if you go through the symbol browser and there is a documentation, then it will be listed on the left side here. So Render Target obviously has a lot of documentation. And yes, some would need more documentation. I'm sorry about that. But for all new types, let's take the select vertices, I'm trying to be more consistent. And sometimes you see like these little example icons there. And if you have example icons, so set context variable, you can take this example and drop it there. And then here is like a nice example for that. So you can hover over these, and this might be useful for learning how things work and finding more relevant operators. One thing that is super useful is also that you can now search for namespaces, which means if you type image dot, you get all the image operators. And if you take the clip image fx, you get all the image fx. So yeah, something that is useful. So actually, what is like, there was a steps example. I'm curious, what is the step example? Good thing that we showed that. So let's change the layout here. I also added, so yes, documentation is missing. So I could write something here, close. I'm not doing this in this video, it's already too long. But for if there's an example, it will also be shown under the parameter windows. So you can drag it here and then you see, oh, it's actually an interesting example. So and then you can see here and see what the step thing is doing. Okay, then symbol browser ranks examples higher so that they are popping up. Improve readability of description and parameter window and lists are the same thing. Some description, so yes, I need to add more descriptions, but getting there. Prevent accidental closing of combined dialog when passing return. So we had this, there should be pressing return. We talked about this in the clone dialog, and now I added also for the combined dialog. Add examples for scatter here, some examples at least. fix spatial hash map algorithm to prepare nearest neighbor search. So the project I'm working on right now is to have very fast GPU nearest neighbor search for points. It's getting there. Working on nearest neighbor search, move shared points HLS shader to, so cleaning up the shader code a little bit. Fix crash on resource manager if linked shaders is not found. Of course, we always want to fix crashes. Refactor, build spatial hash map and example use case. So we see there's a new example here. So we can look at this. Build spatial hash map example. There we go. And so what this does is, so these are all points. And we see that we have a grid there. And we get like all the neighbors within these grid cells. So and it's fast. So this will be the basis for like a tons of nice void effects. So once I have time to work on more effects, this is I'm looking forward to that. So we cleaned up the git ignore file, we fixed another crash, we added repetition point example, fixed crash when loading symbols with no longer existing instance. So fixing, I'm not going into the why something was crashes. Fix UI glitch when opening symbol browsers, update repetition point example, Gizmo transform for vector. Oh, this is actually really nice. So if you have sometimes you have things that are only two-dimensional, like the position here. And then if you want to move the position, so this should of course work. So it didn't after my refactoring. Now it's working. And the nice thing is that we can actually switch to full screen mode. And then if we render this, and then we change this into the background, and then now we have this. I have to fix the alignment here, it's driving me insane, but if we now select an operator, we can actually manipulate things while we are in this full screen mode. And I like this a lot. So it's already becoming pretty handy. So let's say we have like multiple texts here. Let's move this over here, and then maybe we transform this one. So this is the group here, and then you can have all three. So this is this text, and this is this text, and this is the group. So yeah, it's a fun way to work. Highlight connection when hovering inputs and outputs. Oh, this is actually super important if you build very complicated examples. What's going on here? So speaking of very complicated examples, let's take this operator, linear ramp. So if we jump into this operator, we can now see that if I'm hovering over here, we see where is this input coming from, and we see this goes into float parameters, but it's coming from vector2 to points floats, and it's coming from the center input of this operator. So if you go into more complex setups like this one, so this is just super useful for me to see like, okay, like this is the constant buffer, it comes from the resolution const buffer, and then it comes from like the get texture size, and which is actually coming from the image A operator. So and then of course you see some indication of how these things are actually being used. So this is already helped me quite a bit to build like more complicated complex graphs. Oh, okay, we almost are there. When hovering over an input slot, contributing, this is the feature I just showed. We are cleaning up some operators. We added a keyboard shortcut to set a window as background. This is what I have been using all the time. So if I'm pressing Control P, this is a new background. Or if I'm pressing Control P. So I'm using this all the time for VJing. Gizmos can be toggled when images are rendered behind graphs. Okay. Then actually I don't really know what this does, but I think it was a meaningful change. Change update of random string. I think there was a update thing missing. I could go in there. Fix there. So square brackets means there's an operator called there. I think it's actually called partial, but anyways, like this is the one demo. And since we changed the grid size spacing, so remember we had grid points, draw points. So then we have this mode here. If you change the scale, like this is the length of this box, and you could also have like the length of the cell. So both are completely valid. So maybe at the same time, completely valid. Draw points, go in here. And so if you don't change this to bounds, then we have an inner box and outer box. And maybe if we drive this by value and move this value also into like the scale thing here. Actually, can I manipulate this like so? No, you can't. But yeah, you see how this is being nicely repeated. Then fix division by 0 quash. So another quash, rename draw quads. Yeah, there was an operator called draw quads W, and I renamed it to draw variant quads. And if you ever wonder why we have like these weird numbers in the background, so this helps me to rename stuff. So renaming didn't do any drastic change because this operator is identified by this long number, by this unique identifier. Then we have a simple point attributes example. Loads. Okay, maybe this might be load JS point example. So maybe load this. So we can render point clouds, and it wasn't really obvious how to do this. Here's an example how to do this. I built this for Alex because he asked for it. Fix render, ASCII renderer. So if you ever wonder what this is, so this we see it's pink, it generates an image. And if we want to be very cyber, we can use an ASCII renderer. Yay. So it was broken because the texture with mapping changed. Fix crash, improve sound input example. Might be interesting. Sound input example. Let's see what this is. Okay, it didn't crash, which is good. If there would be external sound coming, you would see how this tries to detect the BPM rate. And yeah, it's a super complicated thing. But yeah, it's a BPM analyzer, and I was curious about how to implement an algorithm that does this, so I did it. So presets. So I'm working on a new feature for presets. It's going to be awesome. But yeah, it needs a lot of work. But this is the main thing I want to finish before doing docking and reworking the UI. But yeah, this is I just need I think presets will make things much more easier to understand what an operator does if you have like different presets showing what it can do. So, and here we are. So this is version. Actually, now that I see, I think this is a bad name. Let's rename this. Can I rename it? delete. Rebase. It is not pushed, but I can't rename it. Sometimes I don't know. Okay, let's create a new tag. So because we are here. So it's a new subversion of Tooll3. There you go, create tag. And we don't want that. Actually, made it even worse. Okay, let's create another tag. New tag, version 3. So there you go. And so this can go. And the reason I can do this now is because this is my local copy. I haven't pushed this. Once I push it, I'm screwed. So, but right now I can still do this. Okay, this was a super long, way too long tutorial. Thanks for watching. This was awesome. I hope you learned something. I have a bunch of more things on my to-do list. If you want to help out with documentation, this would be totally awesome. So I think just writing a sentence or so for an operator would help other people a lot, building examples as well. So drop me a note if you want to contribute. I'm looking forward to build more on this stuff. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening. Bye.